Where are the lost 10 tribes of Israel? Hello, this is ChartGPT today. That's an often asked question. Who are the lost 10 tribes of Israel? That has a recent merit based upon recent geopolitical situations going on in the Middle East. So we thought we would get into that a little bit and look at it more from an analytical point of view. Who could they be, or do they even exist at all? First off, let's take a look at a kind of a family tree. Now, these are pretty much accepted by most pundits of this particular topic. And of course, this is a family tree from Noah down to what people typically call Jacob, who was later named Israel in the Bible. Noah, Shem, Terah, and of course Abraham, the father of all Abrahamic religions, Islam, Jews, and Christians alike. And then Isaac to Jacob, who then became Israel, which then bore in the 12 tribes of Israel. Here's a little bit more detail on that family tree of Abraham. From Abraham, Isaac, Rebekah. What's interesting, he did have a lineage through Hagar, his handmaiden, which became most of the Arab people, and through another part, which was part of the tribe of Aram. So that's another lineage. But most of them come down to Jacob. Esau sold his birthright to Jacob, and then so Jacob becomes the lineage from that point. Then going down even further, here are the different 12 sons of Israel. You can see some of them are born by Leah, even the handmaiden, some through Rachel, which was the original desired wife of Jacob. We can go into the detail of that, and then of course from Rachel's handmaiden, Dan and Naphtali. So you can see these are the 12 tribes, and they did some adjusting over time. The important point here is Joseph, who was given the birthright, not Judah, had two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, would become critical, and those two had double portions to Joseph, and Levi was the Levitical priesthood, who got no land, and everybody else got portioned off land, as you'll see later in a map. Here's a little bit of a timeline here of the different kingdoms. We can see, we go back as far as David the king and Solomon, and after the king Solomon, they split between Jeroboam and Rehoboam, and you can see here that Jeroboam became part of the 10 tribes, and Rehoboam became part of the southern tribes back in 975 BC. And of course, in the lineage of 10 tribes, they were eventually lost in captivity to Assyria in 721 BC. And of course, the kingdom of Judah went on, kind of disappeared themselves, but then came back to return to the Jerusalem, and came back in around the 432 BC. So let's kind of give you a lineage, and I think this is mostly accepted by most people. Here's kind of a little bit of a map of that. The important thing to point out here is that Judah was one nation below, and Israel was the nation to the north. And one of the first times mentioned the word Jew mentioned in the Bible, they were at war with each other, as they often did, as brothers do. And of course, you can see the migration path. There's other migration paths that have the 10 tribes that basically disappeared, went all around the European Mediterranean area. So what we've done to see who these 10 tribes might be is we take all the believed theories, consulting AI and different other sources. Then we'll look at some biblical attributes, what these 10 tribes might look like today, if at all, and do an analytical truth table to see who the best candidates might be compared to these particular attributes from the believed theories. So we'll quickly go through these. You can check out the description link and the post link about more details on them, and of course it's quite in depth. There's first one here. Theory 1 was that Japan basically has a remnant of the lost 10 tribes, and they migrated to Japan, believe it or not. There's some theory about that. There's another, probably a big one here, is that a lot of the 10 tribes eventually came back and were absorbed into the modern day of Judah. There's even an attempt to try to do that, searching out Jewish people that might live in foreign lands. Here's another one that says, on Theory 3, that says basically 10 tribes truly are lost and they're never going to be found. There's some people believe that there's through the lineage of Queen of Sheba, that the lost 10 tribes of Israel went to Africa, believe it or not. And then, of course, there's a big one here, that the Anglo-Israel connection. There's a big theory that it was the Anglo-Saxon that migrated up to Europe. There's even a group that says the Pashtuns in Pakistan and near India are part of that 6. Of course, there's other notables. There's some early Christians who went to New Zealand, even the American Indians. Of course, if you believe the Mormons, they think that they're part of that. So there's a lot of odds and ends. There's a lot of people wanting to be Israel because, I guess, the chosen nation of God, everybody wants to be close to God. So now let's look at some attributes what these lost 10 tribes of Israel was going to be using some biblical citations. So we won't go into the details. You can see the specific scriptural references below the headlines here. But the first one was the promise to Abraham was going to be everlasting, so they wouldn't be lost. There would be numerous descendants, great nations, plural, spread to around the globe, and that was the promise to Abraham. The other key point I think to mention here is Israel's birthright to Joseph. Ephraim was to be a company of nations, and Manasseh a great nation. So there's an implication there, and there would be brothers, obviously. Israel, to receive the larger portion of the promised land, would be led by Ephraim. So Ephraim would be the leader of all Israel, not Judah. Then the idea is at the end of the age, if in fact this was everlasting to the end of the age was to be increased in knowledge, travel, wealth, and corruption, believe it or not, and the possible destruction of the earth because of Israel's sin. Then there was to be some kind of end time gathering prior to the what they call the Great Tribulation, and they would all the tribes of Israel would be repatriated to Israel, what often is referred to as an elect from the nations. Of course, then there's the idea that there's a spiritual Israel. Of course, it's a New Testament in the sense that if you believe in Christ, you are part of spiritual Israel. So the gathering of nations isn't necessarily a physical genetic regathering, but it's spiritual. And of course, that kind of bleeds into the idea that, well, there's 144,000 that would be gathered, as specified in Revelation, so it's not going to be huge amounts of people. So this brings us to our truth table of the known theories. Of course, on the left-hand side we have the attributes, great nations, and I should have added everlasting. They were to be spread globally, numerous people, 2 brother nations, 1 company of nation, 1 a great nation, and affiliation with Judah, because obviously Judah is still a brother. These nations would be wealthy and knowledgeable towards the end time. So when you look at all the different theories across Japan, the absorption into the Jewish state, lost totally. African theory, the Anglo-Israel theory, Western Asian theory, and other small, kind of do a high, medium, low. What do they fulfill these attributes? And you can look at the different calculations we gave, and of course those are just opinions, but you can probably adjust those to your will or not. But I think it's clear which theory satisfies most of these attributes, but I'll let you kind of decide that for yourself. And maybe you have other attributes that aren't on here, but then you start doing the truth table and it becomes clearer and clearer who in the end time, if this is the end time, and if the Bible is really true or not. And all this has relevancy today in terms of the geopolitics and the things that are going on in the Middle East. If you understand the true identities of who the countries are and what alliance they would have, sometimes you might think they're irrational, some of the support that other countries give to other countries. But when you understand the true identities in the lineage, it all starts to make sense. In any case, take our online poll. Who do you think the lost 10 tribes of Israel are? And you got to be somewhat critical to yourself and not just make up a wild story, but there has to be some kind of citation and rationale behind it that fits all these attributes and not just the ones you decided to carve out on your own. In any case, don't forget to subscribe.